I've run ARs for years, but the rifle that never leaves my truck is the Ruger Mini-14, and I'm going to show you why this so-called old-school rifle still outshines America's favorite. What's up, everyone? This is Ted from Line 45, and today we're going to lay out the reasons the Ruger Mini-14 still earns its keep, even when it's stacked up against America's favorite black rifle. Before we dive in, do me a solid. Smash that subscribe, tap the bell, hit all the dang buttons down there. You don't gotta, but it keeps this train rolling and lets me crank out more of this wild gun talk for y'all. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to it. Origins of the Mini-14. Look, everybody knows the AR-15 runs the show in America, but here's the part folks forget. It wasn't even meant for you and me in the first place. Eugene Stoner cooked it up in the late 52nd. The military snatched it up as the M16-inch, the 62nd, and the rest is history. That rifle was born and bred for war. Then it got watered down into the civilian ARs we all know today. Now flip over to the Ruger Mini-14. Bill Ruger and Jim Sullivan dropped it in 1973, and they didn't design it for soldiers overseas. They built it for guys like us right here at home. They took the battle-proven DNA of the M1 Garand and M14, shrunk it down, and gave civilians a rifle that worked in the field without looking like it came off a battlefield. That's why it's got that Garand-style bolt, piston-driven system, and a silhouette that feels more like a hunting rifle than a tactical toy. The AR and the Mini couldn't have been born more different. One was made for combat and then sold to civilians later. The other was built from the ground up as a working man's rifle, for ranchers, for hunters, for folks who just needed something tough that ran clean. And that's the part people miss. The Mini-14 was never chasing the AR. It was carving its own lane. And once you see where each rifle comes from, the rest of this matchup starts to make a whole lot more sense. Appearance and public perception. I'll tell you straight, the AR-15 is the gun everybody notices. You pull one of those out, and folks either think you're headed to war or about to make the evening news. It's got that full-on tactical look, rails, pistol grip, blacked out, all business. Doesn't matter if it's just a range toy. People see an AR and instantly slap the assault rifle label on it. That's the world we live in. Now, the Mini-14? Whole different vibe. You throw that in a wood stock, and most people barely look twice. It just looks like a hunting rifle. I've had mine sitting on the rack next to a .22 and a .30-30, and unless you know guns, you'd never realize it's running the same .223 or .556 as an AR. That's the beauty of it. It's low profile. I can toss it in the truck, take it out to the back pasture, and nobody bats an eye. And let's be real, in certain states where black rifles are on the chopping block, the Mini-14 slips through because it doesn't look the part. Same firepower, same range, but it doesn't draw heat. That's huge if you live somewhere that loves writing laws based on how a gun looks instead of how it works. That's why I say the Mini-14 plays the long game. The AR's the flashy prom king, but the Mini's the guy in the corner who never quits working. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. Operating system and reliability. Here's what I learned real quick, running both rifles. The AR-15's direct impingement system is fine when it's clean, but the second you start dumping mags, all that gas and crud gets blown right back into the action. I've seen the bolt turn black in just one afternoon. Keep it lubed and it'll run, but let it go dry in the wrong conditions. Dust, sand, even just a long day with no cleaning kit, and you're asking for jams. I've had it happen out in the pasture, and nothing ticks you off like a rifle choking when you actually need it. The Mini-14 is built differently. That short-stroke piston does all the heavy lifting up front. The gas drives the piston cycles the bolt, and the filth stays forward instead of puking all over the receiver. That means the guts of the rifle stay cleaner and keep running longer. I've left my Mini bouncing around in the truck, covered in dust, pulled it out weeks later, and it still cycled smoothly. Same story after a rainy hog hunt. The AR needed a strip down, but the Mini kept spitting brass without a hiccup. It ain't that the AR can't be reliable, but it needs more babying. The Mini doesn't care if it's dirty, wet, or has been riding in a toolbox. You shoulder it, you pull the trigger, it works. That's why old ranchers, farmers, and anybody who treats their rifle like a tool keep trusting the Mini-14. Build and durability. One of the biggest things that sold me on the Mini-14 is how damn tough the thing is built. Pick one up, and you can feel it. It's not some lightweight polymer toy. Ruger Cold Hammer forges their barrels, and if you've ever run one, you know they hold up. I've put thousands of rounds through mine, and the rifling is still crisp, accuracy still holding tight. You can't say that about every budget AR barrel out there, especially the ones that cut corners with cheap steel. Another big plus? Stainless. Ruger offers the Mini in stainless steel, and for folks who live in humid or coastal areas, that's a lifesaver. I've hunted hogs in Gulf Coast humidity where everything rusts overnight, and that stainless Mini just laughed it off. Try that with a bargain bin AR barrel, and you'll be scrubbing orange spots before the weekend's over. And don't forget the action. That Garand-style rotating bolt has decades of battlefield lineage behind it. The Mini the 14th of may not have gone to war, but the system it's built on sure did. That means you get an action that can take abuse and keep driving forward. I've seen Minis tossed around in truck beds, dropped in mud, banged on fences, they still cycle. I'm not saying ARs can't be durable. The high-end ones are tanks. But the Mini doesn't need a high price tag to give you a rifle that's built tough. Straight out of the box, it's ready for years of hard use without upgrades. Handling and ergonomics. Here's the thing I like about the Mini-14. It shoulders like a rifle you grew up with. No buffer tube sticking out the back, no awkward angles. Just a straight stock that feels natural whether you're running wood or synthetic. When I throw it up, the sights line up clean, and it points like a hunting rifle. That's a big deal for folks who don't want to feel like they're holding a Lego set. The AR shines with modularity, sure, but sometimes all those options get in the way. You're swapping grips, stocks, rails. Half the time you're chasing perfect instead of just shooting. The Mini doesn't play that game. It comes ready to run, and the factory stock options actually work. Ruger's folder is compact and solid, and aftermarket outfits like Samson give you options if you want a modern look. But you don't need to upgrade to make it usable. One underrated detail: the sight radius. The front sight sits almost at the muzzle, giving you more distance between front and rear sights than a carbine-length AR. That makes irons easier to shoot accurately. Pair it with an optic on the factory rail, and you've got flexibility without overcomplication. And for handling in tight spaces, folding stock Minis are slick. I've run one through brush and in and out of trucks, and it's as handy as an M4. No buffer tube means it folds down clean and carries light. It's simple, practical, and doesn't need tinkering. Magazines, cost, and value. Now here's where I gotta be honest with y'all. The Mini-14's mags are both its blessing and its headache. The rifle runs smooth as butter with Ruger factory mags. 20 rounders, 30 rounders, even the 5-round hunting mags. They're built like tanks and feed without drama. But go cheap on aftermarket mags, you're asking for jams. I've tried a few over the years, and most of them turned my Mini into a single shot. So if you're running a Mini, stick to Ruger mags, period. The AR's got the advantage here. P mags, GI mags, take your pick. They're everywhere, they're cheap, and they work. That's one spot where the AR has the Mini beat hands down. Availability is night and day. Now let's talk about price. A brand new Mini-14 usually runs about $1,000. You can find used ones for a little less, but they hold their value pretty well. Compare that to ARs, which can range anywhere from a $500 budget build to a $2,000 Gucci setup. But here's the kicker. The Mini doesn't demand upgrades. You buy it, you run it. With an AR, most folks start swapping triggers, barrels, rails, optics mounts, you name it. Before you know it, that $700 rifle has $1,000's worth of extras bolted to it. Value-wise, the Mini is old school. You pay once, and you get a rifle that's reliable out of the box. It's not the cheapest, but it doesn't nickel and dime you down the line either. How practical is the Ruger Mini-14? Here's the truth, man. The AR-15's always going to be America's poster boy. But the Ruger Mini-14 is the rifle that actually gets used. I've had mine bouncing in the truck, slung across the ATV, taken it after coyotes, and kept it by the back door for home defense. It's not flashy, it's not covered in rails and gadgets, but when I pull the trigger, it works. That's the whole point. If you're a rancher or farmer, the Mini's damn near perfect. Light enough to carry all day, tough enough to take a beating, and chambered in 2.2, 3, or 5.56, which are ammo you can find anywhere. If you're hunting, it doesn't look tactical, so nobody gives you grief out in the field. For home defense, it shoulders fast, irons are solid, and with a folding stock, it's maneuverable indoors. And because it doesn't scream assault rifle, it's a lot less likely to end up on a politician's hit list than an AR. I'm not knocking the AR. It's modular, it's accurate, it's America's rifle. But if I had to pick one semi-auto rifle to cover everything, from varmints to defense to just plain plinking, I'd take the Mini-14. It's reliable, it's durable, and it doesn't need a bunch of upgrades to do its job. So yeah, call it old school if you want. I call it the rifle that keeps earning its place. The AR might be the prom king, but the Mini-14 is the workhorse that never leaves the truck. And for me, that's the rifle that matters.